So I'm happy to introduce, here he comes, Miles Witt Boyer. He's a wedding photographer. How you doing, Miles?
Hey, I'm really good. How are you guys?
Great, great. Hey, start off real quick. What would you say is your go-to lens during a you shoot obviously the event and the portraits afterwards? Because you know a lot of wedding photographers are going to ask you, what is that go-to lens you like to go to? You know that, hey, if I have this in my hand, it's going to be a good day.
Man, I get to drive the Ferrari to work every day, right? So I shoot the GFX 100 series cameras, the 100 and the 100S, and the lens that definitely gets the most love. Both of the lenses that get the most love are the 63 millimeter, which is roughly a 50 millimeter equivalent. If you stepped back to full frame, which is fun to be able to say. And then the 80 millimeter, which is a weird like 72 millimeter equivalent or something like that. Yeah, and those are the ones that get the most love. But I shoot with a lot of weird stuff. I shoot with an 18 millimeter 1.4 a lot.
Nice.
Yeah, I love
creative stuff, right?
I just I love proximity. We'll talk about that a little bit during this presentation, but I really love the way as a wedding photographer we're given access, and so I feel like a lot of people tend to kind of like play it safe in their distances, and I like to either be too close or too far away, very much on purpose, if that makes sense.
That's great. Years ago when I shot my very first wedding, a wildlife photographer told me, fill the frame. So I filled the frame, and then when they wanted an 8x10, you couldn't crop it to an 8x10. So of course I had to come up with hey, I'm giving you a special artist rendition 8x12. This is how I saw the wedding. So how are you? Do you shoot a little wider?
You've been BSing people for a long time then. No. But that's about 2/3 of what we do as wedding photographers, right? Isn't that that's sort of our role, is just convincing people that we know better for some reason, right? Yeah, sorry, you asked a question. I missed it.
So for you, do you fill the frame or do you shoot a little loose? What do you like to do?
Okay, so here's the joy of having a 100 megapixel camera, right? I can do anything I want. Yeah, so if you were to see my style of photography, I tend to shoot fairly far back on a lot of my work, but I do very intentionally compose in camera, and so there's not a lot of cropping that goes on in post, actually, and so I'm a huge believer in like giving myself enough room to kind of straighten horizons or fix geometry, because I'm sort of a nut about symmetry. But no, man, I think that the magic is this. That's what we're going to talk about today, right? It's this collaboration between why you shoot, how you shoot, and what you deliver, and that process, like how you unpack that. That's the proprietary element. Like that's what makes you special.
Awesome. We all I did check over your work, and I love how you include a lot of the environment in your shots. And I was like, oh man.
I've always kind of laughed at a lot of wedding photographers. It's almost like they assume that the people don't know what they look like. Right? Like I want to feel what a wedding felt like. I want to tap into those emotions for my couple, and I want them to be able to feel that again. But a lot of times sight and detail and perfection interrupts those emotions, and you get in too tight, and sometimes you're so caught off guard with the fact that your hair wasn't how you wanted it to be, or your tuxedo didn't fit the way you wish it would. And if you would just back up, you remove all that vanity and you just show the emotion. So
awesome. All right, yeah, I'll let you take it away from here.
Cool, man. Let's go. So I'm going to screen share, and I am going to give everybody a like a cool, I think it's a little bit of a different perspective from some of the stuff that has been spoken to so far. Let me know, Vanelli, if my screen is live.
Yep, we got it.
Yeah, cool.
You
So
want to make it full screen?
I wanna, what's that?
Can you make it full screen?
Oh, sure. Is it?
About.
It's full screen V, I think.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe just click the green dot just to be safe. That's all.
Okay.
Yep, there we go.
All right. Perfect. Okay, so, and then I just lost it, didn't I? Dang. I'm so sorry, guys. Did I just peel out of it?
You did. Go ahead and reshare your screen. That's all. Just
All
click the share screen button at the bottom of the screen and bring it back up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everyone.
No, it's okay.
All right. It's pulling it back in now.
We could still hear you and see you. So trust me.
Okay. Good.
It's all good.
All right. We're going to do this how I know to do it then. All right.
Yep. If you just go to the bottom of Zoom, or if you're on your Mac, switch back to the Zoom application. There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
You're up.
Okay, so one of the things I really want to dig into here is more the why than the how. I know that there's some remarkable editors that you guys have already heard from and that you're going to hear from that really want to dive into, the nitty gritty on how things get done. And that's really powerful. But, as a working photographer, I think one of the things that is really valuable to hear sometimes is a couple of quick notes. Number one, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. And a program that is as powerful as Luminar AI allows us to do some things that at some times, like, we need to even throttle ourselves. But it's a really powerful thing to understand where and why to use a program like this. And so as I was building this out, the thought process for me really came down to this idea of punctuation. I use Luminar AI in my process as sort of a finishing touch to everything. It's sort of that little proprietary element that allows my work to stand out. And so here's the whole point of this presentation as we walk through. I want you guys to hear me out on this, because a lot of times we get so caught up in the technical stuff, right? The gear that we use, the lighting that we use, all of the minutia of who we are as artists, that we forget that the people around us and often our clients are just waiting for us to finish the sentence, right? Like, they're waiting for us to go ahead and tell them what good is. And we've got to have the wherewithal to understand that, as artists, we matter. Like, our perspective matters. But in order to get through some of the noise, we kind of have to have the courage, I would say, to have a finished look, to have a final version of what our art looks like. And so here's the things we're going to go through really quickly. This is a short presentation. Vanelli, you guys, I usually do these in 4 and 5 hour stays. So you said 30 minutes and I got nervous. But we're going to dig in really quick to who I am and why all of this matters to me. And then hopefully why that should and could matter to you guys, as well as some process images as to how I'm actually delivering images and what I'm doing in Luminar AI. That kind of adds that final little sprinkle of glitter to the whole thing, right? So here's where I start with a lot of presentations like this, and I think it probably is more valuable working with Luminar AI and a presentation to all of you guys than it is in any of my branding talks or camera talks or wedding workshops. But this is the simple truth. Guys, we don't communicate who we are well. We really don't. We do a really poor job in our branding and our marketing and our social media because of any number of things, our insecurities or our shortcomings or being overconfident or a lack of education, whatever it is, we do a really crappy job of explaining who we are. And yet for some reason, we just expect that our clients will understand what we're asking them to understand about us, but we aren't actually educating them into what that is. And there's something really powerful, whether you're a wedding photographer or a portrait photographer or a landscape photographer. There's something very powerful about having the sense of balance to explain and to educate the people who are hiring you and seeing your work, to say that this is what authentic is, This is what good is. And here is how I connect those two things. So I guess the next step then would be to say, like, who am I, right? I'm assuming a lot of people in here have never heard of me, and that's okay. So I'm Miles Witt Boyer. I'm a wedding photographer. I'm based out of Arkansas in the United States. I do what we all do. I travel around. I shoot fancy cameras, and I play for a living. And behind all of that, there's a big business. There's associates, there's editors, there's designers. There's sponsors and speaking engagements and all of that stuff. But the reality is that I'm just a wedding photographer. And so are a lot of you guys. And so what separates me from my industry and from my competition often comes down to just a few quick little degrees in my work. And that's what happens at the end. It's how you capture it, but it's also then how you present it. And so I kind of have this very maybe evolved vision for cinematic color and dynamic composition. I really love for my images to feel like stills from a movie. And so because of that, I focus really hard on making sure that I am involved and engaged with my clients, as well as with the light, as well as with the editing process. But here's a challenge to all you guys that are listening. I'm genuinely curious. What if because of your brand or your style or your communication, your equipment, maybe your tendency to stop just before your work is finished? What if just because of those couple of degrees, you're forgettable? And you're putting all this effort into trying to create something that you're proud of and that you can get behind and that you love. And you're spending all of these hours in pre-production and shoot time and post-production, and your clients forget about you simply because the work isn't quite finished. The feeling isn't quite there. And so though I want to absolutely and obviously say the words Luminar AI 150 times during this program, what I actually want to convince and challenge you guys with is to find that proprietary element for yourself, to dive deep enough that you understand that if you use this program or this process or this concept or this relational client experience, it will put you over the edge. It is where success is hiding for you. And for me, it has really found itself a lot in how I'm able to use Luminar AI to just add, as I keep saying, that little sprinkle. So a lot of these images that you're seeing, it's hard to tell what I've done. And that's the goal. For me, that's the goal. I don't want my images to look over edited. I just want them to look just a little bit better than real life, just like a little bit extra, right? And where that hides for me is I want to make sure that I'm never forgettable, that our clients know my name, that the work stands out. And it comes to this paradox right here, this dichotomy. We've got to learn to connect the voice of the photographer with the art in the photography. We have to align those things. And it doesn't matter how many six-figure classes you take or how many workshops you take or how many times you sit in a branding course with a pen and paper or an editing course and get screen captures and try to reverse engineer everything you see. Unless you can connect the value in the photographer with the value in the photography, all you are is a camera technician. You're a content creator. And the art comes after that. It's the next step. The art comes beyond the camera technician, beyond the editing. The art comes in the experience that you deliver to the clients at the end of the whole thing. So I want to dig just a little bit into how subtle I'm often using Luminar AI to present a final look. And so you've got here an entire process, the whole process. This image was just edited yesterday. A straight out of camera image from a GFX 100 with a quick, very simple color edit done in Lightroom. And then I'm pulling into Luminar AI. And the magic is happening in there. And here's what I think is remarkable, guys. After 10 years, 500 weddings all over the world. What I love so much about Luminar AI is sometimes just the templates, just the suggested templates are enough to completely blow my mind with what is possible. And so I'm rarely using the suggested templates because a lot of times I feel like they're a little bit over the top for my finished product, but I'm seeing things in ways that there's no way I would have seen. And so in this third image where it says Luminar AI, what I've done is I've tucked ever so slightly, but I've tucked her abdomen in, I've smoothed skin, I've kind of gone an all over cleaning look on the whole thing. But I've also brought back the sky through that smart contrast process, which is unbelievable. And I've added in sun rays, and they're subtle. But when you look side by side, it's remarkable how cool, how clean it is that you can just simply add in the sun rays and then a little bit of mist. And then I took it into Photoshop just to remove those chairs in the back. But a note here, I will say this. The cloning tool in Luminar AI is absolutely remarkable. It really is powerful. For this image, it was a little bit more cumbersome for me. So I did go ahead and do the extra step. But I want to take it over to where you can probably see it a little larger here. So I've got just a basic edit, just a Lightroom edit, and then that cinematic finished edit. And guys, it's night and day. And it's the difference in an image that is good and an image that is great. And I want to challenge that. Where I'm going to go next with this whole thing is kind of a big ask of the industry. It's something that I say in a lot of workshops and a lot of trainings. But I want to challenge you guys that are listening, that are investing your time, that are taking time away from what could be refining your process or your work to try and educate yourself, to ask yourself, when was the last time that you were really brave as an artist? When was the last time that you took significant risks as an artist? This is a before shot. This is a straight out of camera shot. This is a straight out of Luminar shot.
Ooh, very nice.
You guys, creativity is courage, and it always has been. That's not a new thing. But those of us that are thriving, those of us that are engaging and changing and evolving and inspiring, there's courage behind that. And when you can jump back and forth between what is already good and what could be great, and you can see them side by side, it's a remarkable process. And you know what? I was hesitant at first, and I love to admit this. I've talked to Kevin about this. I was really hesitant when I first jumped into using Luminar AI, simply because, as I said when I started, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. But in this moment, and the reason I chose this image to highlight so powerfully, in this moment when I delivered this photo to my clients, and this photo was taken the week before last, the reaction that I got back from the bride, from Luciana on the left, was simply, oh my God, I didn't even remember the sky being that beautiful. And in that moment as a photographer, you want to take credit for it, right? But the most powerful, most remarkable thing that I was able to do was just smile and say, that's because you were so caught up in the moment. Yeah. So yes, it's true. I could have, with a click or two, put a galaxy in the background, or a space shuttle coming out of the side, or 3 moons. We could have gone too far, but the power in Luminar AI is that you are still the artist. So even though you're using these incredible algorithms that are scanning your image and adding a little bit of extra flavor to what you do, you're still the artist. But to have done a sky replace like this, without Luminar AI would have taken me hours and hours and hours. And not only would I not have done it, I would have been very against it. It would have been against my profits, against my time. It wouldn't have justified the amount of effort that went into it. And yet I am able to look at this image and say 100% worth the extra 3 minutes that it took me to click that sky and say, let's go.
Yeah, because you're right. There's a lot of photos that we no longer, well, in the past, we gave up on. Like, if I have to put a sky in here, it's gonna take way too long. It's not gonna look realistic. Skip it. And you may not even take the shot because of that. But yeah, this came out absolutely stunning. She must have been in heaven when she saw this.
It was a really cool moment. It was a really cool moment. I've got another one here in a minute I'm going to show you, but it was a powerful moment for sure. You know, to be able to sort of see that reaction. And so I guess here's where I'm going with all of this. If you're following, and I'm hoping, Vanelli, that they will have questions and stuff. I'm trying to rush through so we can get to that stuff. But
we're at the 5-minute countdown.
Oh wow. Okay. You know, when my story is intentional, guys, my clients have the chance to hire me and not my camera. But why that's important is because that gives me creative freedom as an artist. That allows me to find the creative freedom. And I know I mentioned just a few moments ago the templates. This was one of the suggested templates. I never would have, oh my gosh, I never would have color toned this image like this, ever. In fact, actually, the Lightroom image on the top left was very similar to how I probably would have left it. And then I pulled it in and I saw those tonal oranges and pinks come out. And oh my gosh, like, guys, I was just completely blown away with what can happen in a click, in one click. It almost made me sick to my stomach because that means anybody could do this. And so
that is so adorable.
Yeah, right. So here's the things that I'm using the most. I think it's valuable to hear that because a lot of times I know we're getting into the minutia, into the details, so down deep. And I really use, I keep mentioning, I really use the high level stuff. I use the body and the skin retouching because it's so fast and it's so beautiful. I use the smart contrast and the detail sharpening a lot. I definitely do some augmentation. I'm kind of blown away at that. And that sun flare finds its way into a lot of my images. And so, you know, I'll leave this and like, you know, hopefully we can dive in and answer a couple questions if there are some, Vanelli, but and everybody always wants this slide. So I'll put it up there just so that while we're talking, people can see it. But let's go. What's going on in the chat room?
Oh, this is awesome. No, yeah. So Marian's asking, did you take the automatic first and then do the details by yourself? In other words, did you do the template first and then tweaked it afterwards?
I did. Yeah. Yes. I mentioned sometimes I click around in the templates just to sort of see what's possible. I feel like there's, for some reason in that program, you know, it's not competitive. It doesn't make me feel insecure to just sort of say like, oh God, that looks horrible, you know, or, you know, hey, that's interesting. There's blue tones there that I wouldn't have played with. And so often I'm removing the template and then going back in and kind of tweaking myself. But sometimes the template is just beautiful. And there's one template called Flawless that is, goodness gracious, like every single portrait that I touch, I just throw that on it because it's flawless. It really, it does everything just enough.
Awesome. And Kevin LaRue brings out a good point. He says, how far were you in your career before you hit upon this unforgettable concept?
Well, it was last year, Kevin. I mean, the truth is, you know, I'm still learning, you know, every day. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and we've created some really powerful, some award-winning images that I wish now I had just finished. You know, I'm able to look back at them and say, that, you know, that was close. It was like 90% done. So.
Awesome. Hey, now where can we find out more about you?
You know, my name is Miles Witt Boyer, right? So, I mean, basically every social media platform, everything is just that, at Miles Witt Boyer. And that's probably the easiest way to find me, mileswittboyer.com. So I'm very active on Instagram, but also active on every other, you know what? I'm not active on YouTube. I haven't swallowed the Kool-Aid yet.
Well, I definitely want to get you back. Daily we have 2 shows, Coffee Break. One's at 1 p.m. Eastern time, the other one's at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I'd love to get you on those shows just to share some more of your insight. Extremely motivational. And I love how you took it to that extreme, showing people, yes, you have the tools, but the creativity comes from within. So
Yeah,
that was awesome.
that's the power, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to watch other people be creative, but it's another thing to be creative ourselves. And I think there's something really powerful about saying, like, I know there are people listening right now that are hesitant to use anything that says AI next to it, because it feels as though it can remove the art. And that's why I actually am so passionate about working with you guys and supporting you guys, is simply the fact that because the technology is so remarkably built, it allows me to do things as an artist that I didn't even realize could be done. So it really is putting the power back in my hands as an artist, which is powerful.
Well, that's awesome. Hey, thanks so much for joining us.